20 and 10 by Claire Bishop, Chapter 1. Make believe. It all started when we were playing The Flight into Egypt. Make believe. It was in the schoolyard at recess time, right after the Christmas vacation, beginning in the year 1944. I have to write it all about it now, lest I forget later on, the way most grown-ups do forget the very important things, such as not talking about a treasure or not asking what one is thinking about. If I write now all I remember about it, perhaps when I am older, let us say 20, somebody may find these pages and make a book. But that is a very long way off. I am only 13, and I was 11 when it happened. My name is Janet. There were also George and Philip and Henry and Denise and Louis and many others. 20 in all. We were all fifth graders except Louis, who was only 4 years old but was allowed to be with us because he was Denise's little brother. And this was permitted because the war was on and France was occupied, and the children were herded all together where it was safest for them to be. In our town, the boys' school and the girls' school were combined, and each grade was sent somewhere in the country. We, the fifth graders, were given that lovely old house on the top of a mountain. It was called Beauvalin, Beautiful Valley, because we could see the valley for miles and miles from up there, and it was beautiful. Anyway, we were all up there, the fifth graders and Louis and Sister Gabrielle with us, and we were very happy because we just loved her. She was young and gay and quick, and she never walked. She flew. Now, as I was saying at the very beginning, we were playing at The Flight into Egypt. I was Mary and George was Joseph and Louis was the little one. The other boys and girls asked, "Who are we going to be?" I said, "Egyptians, of course. Can't you see? The 3 of us, Joseph, the little one, and myself, we are DPs, refugees, Jewish refugees. We have fled into Egypt." "Why?" asked Denise. "Because King Herod wanted to kill the little one. Don't you remember? Sister Gabrielle told us about it," I said proudly. "What do we, the Egyptians, do?" asked Philip. Then it was that Henry said flatly, "We sell." "Sell?" I cried. "Well, what do you think?" went on Henry. "Jewish refugees have got to eat just like the others, don't they?" I didn't know what to say because I didn't want to make Henry angry. He was so very good at make-believe games. Also, it was really because of him that I was Mary. George, said he did not want a fair Mary. He said it was all wrong since Mary was dark, and I was furious because I knew all the time he said that because he prefers Denise, who is dark. So I said Mary was a blonde, and the proof was that I had seen a picture of her made by a man called Memling, and she did have blonde hair in that picture. Then Henry stepped in and said, "George is right, and Janet is right too, because sometimes Mary is dark and sometimes she is fair. Mary can be French, Spanish, Russian, Negro, Indian, Chinese, anything at all." Denise said, "How do you know?" And Henry said, "I know." And that was that, because Henry is very, very clever. Then he added that since we had had a dark Mary for the Nativity, Denise, we could have a fair one for the flight into Egypt, and I could be Mary. Henry does like me. "Don't you think it's only just?" asked Henry grandly. George nodded. He could hardly do anything else. So I was Mary, and I didn't want to make Henry mad. When he suggested that the Egyptians had to sell to the Holy Family because refugees have got to eat, I had to think very fast for an answer. "Henry is right," I said cautiously. "All refugees have got to eat." My idea was that we, the little one Joseph and myself, we would make the journey fat first. I pointed to the whole playground. Then, when we get to Egypt, you Egyptians can give us everything. The baker bread, the butcher meat, the housewife diapers for the little one. "Phew!" interrupted Henry. "That's no fun. What is the matter with Joseph anyway?" he asked, turning toward Joseph George and getting right into the game as he knew so well how to do. Can't you pay for the stuff, Mr. Joseph? Course, said Joseph. I can work. I am a carpenter. Look, fellow, said Henry, already there are not enough jobs to go around in this village. Henry, I stomped my foot. I was almost cross. Henry, you cannot talk to Joseph that way. To Joseph. Be quiet, ordered Henry. Are we playing or not? Yes, of course. I guess I'm just stupid. Go ahead. Only, I added, don't make it too long, because Jesus, is awfully heavy in my arms. I think that all you Egyptians could at least offer me a chair. Philip made a gesture of pushing a chair towards me, and I thanked him. All right, said Henry. Now we men can talk this over. Mr. Joseph, what about your ration cards? We don't have any, answered Joseph. Well, that's bad, mused Henry, stroking an imaginary beard. But, as I told you, retorted Joseph, I can work. Not so fast, not so fast, admonished Henry. I already told you work is no good, and now you have no ration cards. Well, we've got to eat, went on Joseph doggedly. Sure. Then he dropped his voice. But you have got money, haven't you? Henry, wailed Denise. She was very sentimental. Don't butt in, snapped Henry. I know what I'm saying, that Mr. Joseph is trying to get work away from us Egyptians, and he has no ration cards, and he pretends he has no money, but he is double-crossing us, because, as a matter of fact, he is rich. We all said, oh! We were petrified. That means turned into stones. And Jesus, in my arms, started to cry. Then I was really cross, and I shrieked, See what you have done! Now the little one is crying. You are horrid, Henry, horrid. Everyone knows that the Holy Family was very poor. Is that so? Queried Henry, as cool as he could be. Well, what about the myrrh, frankincense, and the gold the wise men brought them? That's worth a lot. What about it, Mr. Joseph? Everybody was quiet. We were just holding our breath and waiting for Joseph George's answer. But it did not come. Joseph George only looked crestfallen. So I had to speak up. Dear Joseph, I said tenderly, you are so unpractical. Just as when we went up to Bethlehem for the census and you had made no hotel reservation in advance. Now, what do you think happened to the wise men's gifts? All gone, of course. How could we have taken that long journey and come this far without paying our way? I have handed over our treasures right and left, and now I have nothing. Not a bit of myrrh, not a grain of frankincense, not a mite of gold. See? I hold the little one up. Hold the little one up a minute, please. I got up and gave Joseph the little one. Then I turned my pockets inside out and shook my dress. I cried, Look, Egyptians, nothing. It's a trick, announced Henry. I hardly know what happened next. It happened so fast. Joseph George put down the little one quickly, glaring at me, of all people, with blazing eyes. Then he marched towards Henry with closed fists, muttering, Unpractical, a trick, money ration cards, work, I'll show you. And suddenly we were all fighting like cats and dogs, some of us on George's side and others on Henry's. But soon we did not know which was which. It was a regular free-for-all. The boys pummeling one another, the girls pulling one another's hair. The white wings of Sister Gabrielle's headdress flapped hurriedly across the yard. There, children, she cried. Shame on you. No, I don't want to hear a thing about it. Think of you getting into a fight when I was just coming to tell you. What? We all cried eagerly, crowding around her. You will see. In the classroom. Quick. Now you shake hands with one another and file in on tiptoe. We did. In the classroom, a young man sat on a chair. He looked very tired. He was not shaved. His clothes were covered in dust. We slipped noiselessly onto our benches and waited in dead silence until Sister Gabrielle made a sign with her head for the young man to speak. When he opened his mouth, his voice had a croak, as it does when one has not slept. Boys and girls, he said, I have to speak to you just as if you were adults. You know that the Germans occupy France. You know also about the refugees and the DPs? We nodded. Now, do you know that there are people who not only are refugees and DPs, but have absolutely no place to go because if the Nazis find them, they will kill them? A shiver ran through the class. Do you know who those people are? Asked the young man. You could have heard a pin drop, and we were amazed when we saw George raising his hand. He got up and said, "The Jews." We had no idea what he was talking about, but the young man looked very startled and asked, "How did you know?" George became very excited and shrieked, "Because there was Herod and the Egyptians, and I was Joseph, and—" He was all red and confused, and he dropped to his seat, and he hid his head in his arms. We almost burst out laughing, but we did not dare because the young man was very serious and sad. To our surprise, he said, "That boy is right. It is the same story always throughout the centuries. This time, Herod's soldiers are the Nazis. That's all." We waited for a little while. Then he asked quietly, "Boys and girls, do you know what happened when Jesus' family was hunted by Herod's soldiers?" We all sang out at once, "They fled into Egypt." "Yes," said the young man, "and they remained hidden there, did they not? Now, once more, Jesus' family is hunted and will be killed if we do not hide them. Will you, boys and girls, help? Will you take with you here and hide 10 Jewish boys and girls whose fathers and mothers are dead already?" Of course, we all cried, "Yes, yes!" We were absolutely thrilled. This was not make-believe anymore. It was the real thing. Sister Gabrielle spoke up. "I did not expect less from you boys and girls, but you must understand that this means the Nazis are looking for these children. If we take them, we must never let on that they are here. Never, even if we are questioned. We can never betray them, no matter what the Nazis do to us. Do you understand?" Well, of course. Had we not played at being the Egyptians? By then, anyway, we could hardly wait to see the new children. And we were delighted when the young man turned to Sister Gabrielle and said, "They are hiding in the woods now. We have walked all night. May I bring them in?" Sister Gabrielle nodded. The young man went over to her. He took her hand and touched his forehead with it, bowing at the same time, and he said, "You know that you can be shot for this?" Sister Gabrielle smiled quietly. "Bring them in quickly," she said. "They must be so tired."